to The Straight Stitch, a podcast about sewing and other fiber arts. This is episode 125, and my name is Janet Szabo. I'll be your guide as we explore all things sewing. I had a busy week getting the garden in and finishing up from plant sale stuff, but I did manage to eke out a little bit of time at the end of the week to sew. I am still working my way through my pile of woven fabrics and making tops. For myself, I made one out of a rayon batik, and then I made another one. I made another Scout tee out of some black cotton lawn fabric from Robert Kaufman. And I commented on my blog the other day that it might seem to be fairly simple and boring sewing to be knocking out a bunch of tops. The patterns aren't that complicated. A front, a back, a couple of sleeves, and either a neck facing or a binding. But what makes that so special to me is that I am making tops that fit me perfectly, either from a commercial pattern or an indie pattern, in this case the Scout tee, that I've altered so that it fits me a little bit better, or my custom drafted pattern. And I love that I can make these tops and I put them on. I don't have to think about them while I'm wearing them. They aren't shifting or moving around on my body. The front isn't creeping toward the back. I have plenty of freedom of movement, and the best of all for me is that I get to use fabrics that I like. So I'm not confined to buying tops in sad colored pastels or muddy earth tones or other colors that don't flatter me. I get to make them in bright blues and greens and things like that. And that really is why I sew. I enjoy the process, but I enjoy looking at all of those tops hanging in my closet and knowing that they fit me and they flatter me. And it was a bit of serendipity that I had an interview with Brooks Ann Camper to post for you this week, because Brooks Ann has a very similar philosophy about sewing and about fitting. And we talked for almost an hour, so I'm not going to blather on too much longer here. I'm going to jump right in and let you hear from Brooks Ann herself. Brooks Ann is a delightful person. She will talk about her sewing journey. She did not learn to sew as a child. She rather fell into it and ended up having a career in costuming, followed by a number of years as a custom wedding dressmaker. And along the way, she realized that what she loves to do is to teach. And she has developed several systems for teaching garment making and turned those into online courses. So we're going to talk to Brooks Ann today and find out a bit more about her and about the courses that you probably need if you're thinking about making any kind of garments for yourself. Brooks Ann, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Janet. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me too.
So I usually start by asking people how they learned to sew and maybe who taught them. And I think you have a very interesting story to tell.
I do have quite the unusual sewing origin story. I grew up as an artistic kid, creative kid, but I never got into sewing. I was not taught to sew as a child. It just never really came up, even though my grandmother was a professional seamstress. It just didn't, my mom and her sisters, didn't get into sewing. They say it skips a generation. So it didn't really come up for me. And I didn't learn to sew until my senior year of college. My artistic self led me to theater in high school. So I also my undergraduate degree is in theater. And this was in a small college in Louisiana. And it was where the theater was part student and part community. So there were community members who were also part of it. And we really did like top-notch shows. And my jam was acting or set construction. I liked using the power tools and being with the guys in the scene shop or being on stage. And I really didn't pay much attention to what was going on in the costume shop because it was mostly community volunteers. There were little old ladies who were happy to be in the costume shop, and so they didn't really need as many students in there. And the room was really tiny also. But my senior year in college, I was cast in a play where I had like a big floofy dress on, and I was sitting around backstage before curtain call. And the director of the play, who's also the head of the department and the head of the costume shop, told me, noticed that I'd gotten my dress all wrinkled. And so he told me that before I go back on stage for the curtain call, that I needed to go to the costume shop and iron my dress. And so I told him that I didn't know how to use an iron, which I didn't because I had never used one before. I was like 21, 22. And I guess I thought that remark would get me out of the chore. I'm not sure where I thought I was going with that one, but I really didn't know how to use the iron. And so he was kind of miffed at me and took me to the costume shop and taught me how to use an iron. And also told me that for the next show, I would not be in the scene shop with the boys. I would be in the costume shop with him, and that I would not graduate without knowing how to use an iron. And so pretty much sentenced me, to this new assignment to working in the costume shop for the production of Oliver. And I was going to be in charge of making all of the workhouse orphan uniforms. So if they looked cruddy, that would be okay because that works for the show. But as you can probably guess, I loved it. I loved hanging out with the little old ladies. I loved the sewing. I loved the whole shebang. Already, it was watercolor sketches from a designer, and ma they were making their own patterns and everything. And so, it was really sort of a super fun, magical experience. And now what happens? Because now I'm graduating, and I just sort of discovered this new thing that I was interested in. And I am school nerd. So I was looking at different schools and I applied almost as a joke to the Yale School of Drama, which is the number one drama school in the country. They have this one, like in their brochure, like a couple of paragraphs, they talk about an internship program. And so I was going to apply to this internship program where they take one person a year. I mean, there's no way I was going to get this right. And so, anyway, as you can also probably guess, I was somehow chosen for this internship. And so I went from making these workhouse orphans costumes to sewing for productions at Yale. And I was like on staff. Basically, I was part of the production team. And all as an intern, you get to take classes and you can take whatever classes you want. And so since I wasn't really working for a degree, so I got to take all these like pattern making classes and couture sewing classes, which is actually what I was also doing during the day, and just like learning from the best of the best. Where all the patterns are, individually made for specific individuals, based off sketches. It was never anything about the fashion industry. It was always individuals, and it was just so inspiring. And so, long story short, I learned to sew at Yale after a short punishment in Louisiana.
Does your professor, did he follow your career?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. We kept in touch the whole for his whole life. He passed away in 2018, but yeah, definitely was unexpected for both of us to have sort of the experience that this led me to.
How long was the internship at Yale?
It was 1 year. So I spent 1 year with Yale. Like it's a very small costuming program. My classmates, one of my classmates was Linda Cho. She's won Tony Awards. My teacher was Jane. My costume design teacher was Jane Greenwood. She's had 100 Broadway productions, nominated for 20 something Tony Awards. So that was my first year of sewing. Like this was my experience. But interestingly enough, is that so it's a costume design program, and I found out actually, even with having a world-class design teacher, that I was not interested in costume design. I liked making the thing. So the costume designer is the one who, reads the play, which I didn't even want to do, and like does all the research and draws all the pretty pictures and comes up with all the ideas. But the costume technician is the one who then takes that sketch and then makes it a reality, figures out how the pattern is made, the fabrication of all that. So I liked all the engineering and making part of it. And so so after my 1 year internship, I looked for graduate programs that were focused on costume technology, the production side of it versus the design side of it. And at that time, which was the late 90s, then there were only two that I found in the country. Every school has a costume design degree, but no one really will teach you how to make it, which is kind of crazy because every designer needs a team of people to execute their idea. Some designers don't even know how to sew, and that's not like a flaw on their part. That's not really part of their job. There's other people who do that part of the job. So that was what I was really interested in. And so then I applied again, thinking that I would not get, I'm still only 2 years into being an absolute beginner who had never touched an iron. And I'm applying for a 3 year master's program specifically in pattern making and sewing. And, but as you can probably guess, I did get the position. They take two students per year at UNC in North Carolina in their costume production. And then I really learned how to sew there as well.
Were you thinking at that point that you were going to go into a career in theater?
Yes, I think that my trajectory at that point, which is what happened, is that I would just go to Broadway or whatever. And you think that that's like a pie in the sky goal, but as soon as I graduated, I moved to New York City. Within 3 days, I had my dream job. I went there with no job, no place to live. My resume has like my friend's address in it because I lived in her boiler room for like 5 days while I found an apartment. My professor at UNC worked for a Broadway costume house. And so she was there. She would do that in the summers. And so I moved to New York in the summer and I went to her with my portfolio and just said, like, hey, here's my portfolio. Who should I show it to? And she calls out to Barbara Matera Limited, is the costume house she works at. She yelled out, "Does anybody know of anybody who's hiring?" And then somebody said, "Lynn Mackey's looking for a milliner." And then Judy, my professor, told me you should go call Lynn Mackey right now. And I was like, right now? Like, no, I was like had only been in New York for 3 days. She's like, go call her right now. I called Lynn and I said, "Hey, I hear you're looking for a milliner." She was like, "Come over right now." And I was like, "Right now?" She said, "Yeah." And so I went over there and then I showed her my portfolio and she was like, "Great. Can you start right now?" And I was like,
Not
"Can I?"
tomorrow, right now.
Yeah. And I did say, "Can I come tomorrow?" She says, "Okay, see you tomorrow." And I worked there my entire New York career. And so Lynn Mackey is a milliner. And so that's a hat maker. So I made hats for Broadway shows and other like big theatrical performances, Disney and um, just you name it, that any sort of big thing that happened, and somebody needed a hat, I might have had something to do with it.
It sounds to me like the universe wanted you to do this.
Yeah. Yep, it more happened to me and I just let it happen. I've learned to like leave myself open for whatever possibility. Those in the internship and the degree, like I was 100% sure I was not getting it. But I decided to like, well, I'm not going to get it if I don't try. And even just
Exactly.
the practice talking to people about maybe getting the job and but yeah, it that was a fast and furious, learning to sew. I went from not knowing how to use an iron or a sewing machine or even a hand sewing needle to sewing for celebrities in 5 years.
Short runway.
Yep.
How did you transition then to bridal couture?
So New York was Fast and Furious. I don't know if I'm a Fast and Furious person. Lots of reasons sort of even so much that I had reached this pinnacle. Like I was sewing for Broadway and for celebrities right out of the gate. I kind of feel like, okay, nowhere else is up. Like I am doing exactly what I want to do. Do I keep doing it? It's also like super physically, hard. It's all millinery is mostly hand sewing, heavy materials, making hats of all different types. I mean, like even just crazy, I worked on the original production of Wicked, making the hats. And so like the chorus, there's just a million like crazy like designs. And um, I was getting like burnout, on physically, financially. Guess what? Once you get to the top of something like that, you still don't make very much money. You can only make a ticket to a play so high, and when it trickles down to the person who made the hat, even though, I deserve to be, compensated, that there's not that much money left. And meanwhile, there was this love story brewing. I had met my husband at UNC, and now he was living with me there in New York, pretty much just because I was there. And so we really wanted to do the house, the dog, that kind of stuff instead of New York. So I quit sewing altogether. I just left and said, wow, I did that. And I was pretty much injured also just because of, working my hand and all that. So I needed to just find some other, some whatever's next. What's going to show up next? So to get to the bridal, so I got a regular job. Not that it's regular at all. I can't believe I even called it a regular job. So my job that I got when I came back so I moved back to North Carolina with my now husband. And I got this job working. I just answered an ad in the paper. And it was still so one of the things I really love about sewing from scratch is that you do make the whole thing from start to finish. It's like the idea, the pattern, the sewing, you make up your own, like there's no instruction book or anything. And then you really do get to call it your own. You started from nothing and at the end you're actually wearing something. Well, this job that I got was similar, but in woodworking. So I worked for 9 years as a custom picture framing artisan. So, but it's not just like, at the back of Michael's, like cutting frames to fit posters or whatever. We were doing museum quality. They're called closed corner frames. So you start with the art first, and then you go from with raw wood. We join raw wood, hand carve, gold gild, all that stuff. So I did museum quality picture frames when I left New York. So that was sort of my day job, um, and not sewing at all. And then how we get to bridal is that my now husband's sister got engaged at the Thanksgiving table in front of everyone. And I was so excited that the words came out of my mouth, I will make your wedding dress. And so we had just bought a house my husband's a carpenter, and so we were renovating it. And so we didn't even have like a bedroom, but we were going to make this sewing room so that I could make his sister Katie a wedding dress. And one of the things that was really fun about that, is that for the first time I was really making clothes. First of all, I had some space and some perspective from what I had gone through. And what I really loved was that this was the first time that I could just do whatever I wanted. I didn't have a teacher looking at me. I didn't have a boss. I wasn't working with a team. It was just going to be me. So I got to really figure out what I really liked, take all the things that I had learned from all the people and make my own sewing style. So that was kind of fun. And then one of the things that many things that I didn't think of when I said, "Hey, Katie, I'll make your wedding dress." But one of them was that Charles has another sister. And so she got engaged and then, of course, wanted me to make her dress. And then Charles and I got engaged and I made my own dress. And I thought it was pretty fun. And then my friend Jonathan brought a plus one to my own wedding, this woman named Leah, and did not really know her. And when they got engaged, she was like, "Oh, you made your own wedding dress. Could you make mine?" And I'm thinking like, maybe this could be a thing. Like maybe I'll give it a try. And so I told Leah that I would make her wedding dress if she helped me make it a business. Like I'll give you a questionnaire and you tell me if you think that's cool. Like we would be able to work it out together. And bonus, her in-laws were lawyers, so they got to help me like work up contracts and stuff like that. So and Leah was the one who told me to start a blog. And this was 2009. So I started blogging the process of making Leah's wedding dress and all the nerdy sewing stuff that I think is interesting. And I think in my mind, I thought, well, this will attract brides. Like they'll think it's so cool to see behind the scenes sewing stuff, but they don't care about sewing. Um, but what I realized as I kept getting more and more bridal clients, which I'm just doing out of a room in my house while I'm also like woodworking. So it's sort of like silk and scissors by night and sawdust by day kind of thing, is that the blog started attracting home sewing people. And this was like a group of people that I didn't really know much about because I hadn't really ever entered that world before. I was in this other sort of sewing world. And so I was like, okay, this sounds fun. Like these are my people. Like now I've got like this community that I can join. I started really feeling like I actually didn't fit in because there was this whole language that I didn't know with all these pattern names and numbers and all these adjustments that correspond to your non-standard body parts and all these charts and sizes and stuff that had never really experienced. I had never sewn anything from a commercial sewing pattern before or sized pattern before. It was always something self-drafted for a specific individual, whether I drafted or whether it was one of my coworkers drafted pattern. That's where I sort of realized that I sew way differently than everybody else does, and that I think the way I sew would really benefit the people who are sewing just for themselves because I mean, it's great to have an inclusive size range, but if you are just sewing for you, you don't need a range at all. You need something specific for you, and something that comes in sizes in, it's inherently impossible to include you. And the opposite is true also. Something that's made just for you is never going to work for a business. And I felt like every sewing instruction was straddling that line, like trying to like hack into a fashion system to make it more like you, or it was actually meant for fashion design students who were going to then go on to make a line of, a collection or whatever, which is not really what you're doing either. And so I decided to like try to make lessons that are specifically for the people who are only sewing for themselves, because I think you have so many advantages over any of this other stuff.
I read your blog
Thank
when
you.
you were doing Deborah's wedding dress. I
Hmm.
followed that whole process because wedding dresses are not something that I ever want to make. My daughter's getting married and I'm not making her dress. I'll make mine, but I'm not making her dress. I don't know if you know I was a knitting designer for 16 years. And when you talk about, drafting things from scratch, yes, and it's sometimes difficult to get across to people that I can't design for every single body type out there.
Impossible.
It's impossible. And so you're designing sort of for some imaginary, idealistic body type.
Yeah, you're creating a tool that will then become tweaked later.
And people would say, "Well, the sleeve on your pattern is too long for me." And I would say, "Make it shorter." It sounds like your bridal business kind of COVID had a fairly big impact on that. And then you had this idea that you needed to be communicating with the home sewer in a different way. So how did you make that transition?
Well, it actually was before that. So the I had already been teaching online for 6 years when the pandemic happened.
Okay.
But that is when the wedding dresses faded away. So I now teach almost exclusively online. I teach my own series of custom sewing courses designed specifically for people who are sewing for themselves. I like to call them solo sewists. So I'm helping the solo sewists make clothes just for them. And how that came about, um, I mean, I'd been thinking about that just from meeting people and back when Instagram was fun and you could actually like meet people and talk to people. The frame making job was great. I loved the work. I loved making the frames. I loved doing the whole thing, but it had become increasingly sort of chaotic and dysfunctional family. And my husband went on vacation with his best friend, and I went to a staff meeting that went so badly that me and several of um, my coworkers, actually, I think all of my coworkers, maybe all but one, put in our 2 weeks notice. We're just like, okay, I'm out. And so I had quit my job while my husband was out of town. And so before he got back, I needed to come up with another idea. And so I had already been doing wedding dresses, and I only did wedding dresses one at a time. It was definitely a labor of love. I worked with people who, you know, needed me for whatever specific reason. It was a if you can buy it in a store, I would tell you please go buy that in the store. So even though I had done it, I only did one dress a year, maybe two. Like it was slow and steady while I worked at the frame shop as well. I had already figured out, I already knew that I was going to leave that job pretty soon. I didn't know I was going to leave it that particular morning, but I had already decided that I didn't want to just do wedding dresses full time. I felt like that would take all the joy out of it for me and for the person. Like I really loved giving them all of my attention and us like going deep into it together and design the dress and have all the fittings and so I wanted to keep that as a side hustle. So I decided to just go all in on online teaching. Because I did feel like surely there's people out there who would enjoy a sewing style more like mine instead of, hacking into fashion formulas or, I try to like avoid fashion at all costs. I feel like that maybe is something that sets me apart. Like I am not interested in capital F fashion in the slightest. In fact, my favorite thing about making clothes is that I don't have to reference a size chart. I don't have to compare myself to someone else's body. I can just have clothes that fit me. Um, so, so while he was gone, I took a 6 week e-course. Well, he wasn't gone for 6 weeks, but I signed up for a 6 week e-course on how to make a 6 week e-course. And so, and this was before any of those like teachables or any of that. Like I was basically my first class was a password protected blog that, and my first a set of students were just like my mom's best friend, my hairdresser, my cousin, anybody. But I wasn't, and that was skirt skills, and that's still the class that I teach today. And so that was in 2014. So I've been teaching skirt skills for almost 12 years now. It was pretty quiet that first class. But these people really weren't my target audience. And so I was really like, oh my gosh, like maybe this isn't good. Maybe I need to tweak this a lot. But I did an afterwards survey, and one student who was someone who was like friends with my suite mate in college, um, I asked like, what's one adjective you would use to describe this class? And she said, epiphanic. And so that she had just had a total epiphany. And I was just like, oh, okay, well, maybe there is something here. Instead of tweaking the class to better fit my hairdresser, maybe I'll just try to find more people like Jen. And so that's where where that took off. And then I've just been going deeper and deeper. And I love teaching these classes more and more every time, just developing systems that work for specific people and letting them actually have clothes that fit them without having to compare themselves to someone else.
And it is life-changing.
That's what people say. I don't have the opposite to compare it to. Like a lot of times they're like, people are asking me about commercial patterns, but I actually have zero experience in that. Um, as far as comparing the two different ways of going about it, it's not something I know that much about.
I don't consider myself to be, I guess we all feel this way. I don't consider my own body to be that odd. I'm a little taller than average. If the average is 5'5", I'm 5'7", but I have a very long torso. And so nothing in the stores fits me. It's all too short. And I've also got high hip curves. And so low-rise pants were a nightmare for me because they wouldn't stay on my body. And so learning these things about myself and why clothing doesn't fit and realizing that I can make things that are perfect for my body and perfect for my lifestyle, it's so empowering.
Yes, yes. I mean, the thing is, everybody is different. I have made enough clothes for specific individuals that that is the reason why, like, I can't open a commercial pattern. Like, it gives me kind of the heebie-jeebies to see all those lines and to think that it's trying to communicate that this is how bodies grow. Like when I open one of those, I see nobody's body. And I've seen so many different bodies. So that's why I'm just like, I feel like that's such a harder starting point to have someone who did the design for you, but now you have to fit it to yourself every time. Like that sounds wild. The opposite is what happens for here is that you map your body once and then you never really have to measure yourself again. You don't have to know what size you are. You don't like, I don't know what my measurements are. I just pull out my tools. And then that's got all the information already in there. And then pattern making is actually super fun when you are not trying to hack into one of these fashion formulas. If you find like a resource on pattern making, it's almost always or always designed for someone who was going to become a fashion student and was going to make it for multiple sizes. Maybe they have like a little section where you can plug in some of your numbers or something to make it more custom to you, but there's still going to be all these like everyone is 2 inches here and take a quarter off the front and put it on the back. That doesn't make any sense. That's not true. Like that's just another sort of formula to try to average everybody out. But you don't, averages and standards are irrelevant if you are only making something for you. None of that matters. That chart that tells you different amounts of ease, well, great, but you're going to decide what you want. It's not a number. Numbers cannot map a body. So I'm not even so into like measurements. I'm pretty numbers averse. And so even though we do use measurements, and we definitely use more measurements than bust, waist, and hips. That doesn't make any sense to me. But we use a lot of photos, like actually fig your shapes. Your shapes are more important than your numbers.
So that
And
was
so
my next question. Do you do this in combination? Is it a combination of flat pattern drafting and a little bit of draping? How?
Good question. So these courses that I teach are all flat pattern courses. Originally, I wanted to teach when I originally took that 6 week e-course on how to make a 6 week e-course. Skirt Skills was going to be the first, and it was going to teach flat pattern. Then the pants was going to be next, and it was going to teach. So let's step back a little bit. There are three main ways that you can make a custom pattern. You can use flat pattern, which is a 2D, like you make a tool that's called a block or a sloper or a moulage or something like that, that is a flat representation of your body. And then you manipulate it flat into designs. And that sort of translates because the fabric that you're cutting is flat. And so it's not the whole process isn't flat. You make mock-ups and do things like that. But mostly you're manipulating things that are flat. Another way is draping. Draping is where you use a dress form, and in custom sewing versus in fashion, you would have the dress form padded specifically to match your body. A standard dress form is just as useless as anything else. And so that is really what you see is what you can get way of going about it. You manipulate the fabric in 3D on the form until it makes the shapes that you like. And that's actually my favorite. And that's what I would do for my wedding dresses. And then the third way is using something that already exists, like a commercial pattern, or you've got a garment that you like and you're gonna make a pattern off of it. And in reality, I use a little bit of those things in all the patterns. But when I started making the classes, I thought I would teach one of those with each type of garment. And then you can still mix and match. So skirt skills, I was going to teach flat pattern. And then because that is how I would make a skirt. Pants, I was going to teach find a pair of pants that are similar to what you like, and I'll teach you how to knock off a pattern, and we'll go on from there. And then for tops, I was going to teach draping on a dress form because that's probably how I would do that as well. So I made the first course, Skirt Skills, and had run it a few times enough that I was ready to start pants. And I asked my students about it, and every single one said, do not have us start with a pair of pants that fit because we don't have pairs of pants that fit. And so I was like, okay, that's valid. I'm listening. And so then so I pretty much invented the way that I teach how to make a block in Skirt Skills. Like we're not taking one of those fashion formulas and plugging in those numbers where you don't know what's going on. It's a very intuitive, sort of holistic way of like making a pattern that fits you. So for Skirt Skills, I was going to make that. So we made flat patterns. So, but then now I'm gonna have to invent a way to make a flat pattern pant draft because I've never seen one that actually fits people. And so just like skirt skills and basically everyone said we want to keep learning flat pattern. We don't want to learn draping. We don't want to have a dress form. We don't want to start with any of that. And so I had already done the first with skirts. So then I was like, okay, I guess I got to do this. So I spent years. These are all sort of me spending years coming up with these systems. And it was really helpful to have started out with the skirt block because we pick up the pants class where the skirt block left off. Basically, in the skirt, we map from the waist to the hips, and then in the pants class, we add legs onto it. It's too much to do it all in one. My number one question is, can I skip skirts? I really just want pants. You really can't. You basically the first class you learn a whole new way to sew. Like everything that you're not building on the education you already have. You're starting over as a beginner and learning new stuff. So it actually is very excellent for even absolute beginners to sewing, especially people who have maybe done quilts or other kinds of sewing, but don't, like they know how to use a sewing machine. We're not starting from total scratch, but you do not need to have made a garment from a commercial pattern. In fact, if the people who are very experienced in altering commercial patterns actually take the longest to work through the class. They think they're going to whiz through because they're so advanced, but they have to pretty much unlearn everything and then start over as a beginner. So sometimes that takes twice as long. And then the beginners are just like, of course, this is how you make clothes. Like, why would you why would you reference anything else? You can just make what you want in your size. So that's kind of fun. So I don't teach any draping classes at the moment. I do still want to, but it hasn't made it to the top of the to-do list yet. And these are all flat pattern classes.
I'm wondering if you've ever thought about why it is that clothing construction isn't taught the way that you're teaching it.
Um, of course, of course. Yeah, it's hard to, like, again, like I say, it's hard to compare because I try not to get too deep in there. Like, I don't like opening up an instruction booklet because I'm just like, no, don't do it like that. Commercial patterns are undeniably helpful tools. Like there's infinite instruction out there and people love it. So this is just like an alternative. I'm not knocking anybody's way of getting where they want to be because that's the ultimate goal is that we really just want to have clothes that fit us and that are fun to make. If you've got a way, great. If you want to learn a different way, I got one.
I'm just thinking, I came at it, and partially I think this was because I was a knitting designer. I came at it from using commercial patterns and having to
Yeah,
adjust commercial pattern. And now I've got a sloper that
awesome.
that works for me, and I can just churn out tops. But part of me is wishing I had done it your way.
You still can.
I
That's another
could.
thing is everybody can dabble in everything. Like I love it when my students take classes from other people. I love, I think we all just really love sewing. And so the more you can learn, the more different ways that you can learn. If it's something you're interested in, if you're not interested in it, well, then don't go that avenue. But if it's something that piques your interest, like, you can always like give it a try and see.
I would be one of the people that would be going very slowly because I had to unlearn everything.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing though, is that this is slow sewing. So the drawback, I guess, is you're not getting quick wins. Like you are you're learning to work one step at a time and like stay in the moment and all this kind of stuff. And so actually the slow people are like my people. The classes that I teach they're video classes. They're pre-produced. Like I spend pretty much a year and a half like making each class. There's about 15 hours of video in just the first class. And they're all, pre-recorded where you get, I'm not just jibber jabbering like I am here with you. Like you're getting the primo information at the right time. I made my courses before Zoom was invented. So it's not a Zoom class. We're not all in a room together for an hour or whatever. Nothing happens live at a specific time unless you schedule it with me. We can do a Zoom. There is a Zoom component, but it's not like you didn't know what time because we would have scheduled it together. And those are one-on-one. I'm very much about the individual. So the lessons that are in the classroom, like that are pre-produced, are all, as much as I can talk about an individual in a very generic way. But then the interaction is we have a mighty network. It's like a Facebook group, but it's not on Facebook. And so that's just sort of an always open group where you and your classmates can post and share what you want when you want. Um, and it's ongoing. I say I give you at least 2 years of support. You get to keep the class forever. I'm not, I say, slow sewing. I love it if it takes you 2 years to take 2 years. But I also offer unlimited support. I probably will regret that someday, but at this point, like I actually love it. So I love working with my students one-on-one, and flat pattern actually works so well online because I think it's even better than in person because you can take pictures. Pictures are flat. Pictures are flat versions of your body. And what are you trying to do? You're trying to make flat version of your body. And so you can really see, like I can take your pictures and I can draw a prediction of what your skirt block would look like without ever taking any measurements. You can see the tilt of your waist. You can see where your darts end. You can see how much intake they have. You can see the curve of your hip. You can see doing it online is kind of the best way to do it. And I can get like more people for and they can pay less money. Like I couldn't sit in a classroom with people, for 15 hours uh and I love that you can share what you want when you want. Like if you're in a fitting class in person, like are you all just sitting around and standing around in your underwear waiting for the next person to get measured or whatever? Like this, you can be like, I feel like sharing this photo. I don't feel like sharing this photo. You get to be in a little bit of in control of how you participate as well and see what other people are doing. And it's just really awesome.
Can we talk a little bit about your ebook about dress forms?
For sure. Yeah. So like I said before, one of the tools for custom pattern making is a custom dress form. And it originally I made the ebook. What started off as a blog post. You can actually get the free version on my website that gives you all the general gist. And then if you want to go deeper, you can buy the ebook, which is $15. I just want to have some kind of offering that was about the same price as a commercial pattern. But so it teaches you a way to pad a dress form to match your specific proportions, which is something I would do for my brides and we would do for like costume clients. And then if you people use them for all kinds of reasons. Maybe you use them to fit commercial patterns or something like that. I like to use them for draping patterns afterwards, but I think having a life-size replica of yourself, I mean, is a pretty helpful tool.
Very
And I have a
much.
pretty unique way of going about getting there. And what I like about padding versus like ordering a custom scan or stuffing a cover or duct tape, or there's lots of different ways. But what I like about padding the best is that you always start with a dress form that is much, much smaller than you, and then you pad out to match your shape. And then that makes it constantly revisable. You if you get a scan and then you gain or lose weight, then you don't you can't take away. And so I love that the padding is something that you can always like move around and add and take away. And then it's easy to keep updated to match your changing body. And the same thing with the blocks too. I like that they're very easy to update as your body changes. You don't ever have to start over from scratch. If you can really get by with taking your measurements one time and then never taking them again. And so actually, I love that part because that's all the icky part for me. I just want to get to the fun part of like making the patterns and sewing.
You have a course opening up.
Yes, so if you're listening to this when it comes out, I do have the intro course, Skirt Skills, is opening for enrollment, or it's open for enrollment right now. The class starts on June 10th. So if you want to get in and get your prerequisite for the pants class that I teach in October, or just want to see what it's all about, you can check it out. On my website. I had my sewing school is called Prep School for Custom Sewing, and it's at learnwithbrooksann.com. And so I would love to have people join if you're interested.
So we've
Um,
talked about skirt skills and we've talked about pants, and your third
mhm.
one is
Top class. So top class we do the tops, and then there's also my newest course is top class 2 where we add sleeves. So you can so I just recently in this 14 years I've been able to produce those few classes. So people are always like, "Oh, we want more, we want more." I'm just like slow sewing. I'm a slow person. Like it takes me the sleeves class took 7 years and the pants class took 7 years. Because I just had to develop new systems. I was not satisfied with anything that was out there. So, but I'm a research girly, so I love like even if I don't like the method, like I love like, oh my gosh, why would they do it this way? I have to know like the why behind everything. And I think it's really kind of cool and radical to start with couture first, like I did. You can do it. You don't have to start with the pillow. You can start with the couture, and then everything is easy rather than you've now only have a small amount of information and you can only make the next thing. When you only learn the shortcuts, you don't know what you're cutting short. And if you learn sort of the big comprehensive picture first and all the whys and hows behind it, then you can make your own decisions about when you want to cut things short. You can still use shortcuts, but you're going to understand what you were cutting short.
you have a wonderful website. You've got student testimonials. I mean, it's very cool to listen and hear exactly what the students think about the classes.
Yes,
So I would encourage everybody to check out your website, and I will put the link in the show notes. Are you on
excellent.
Instagram?
Yes, I'm on Instagram as Brooks and Camper, and so you can follow me there. And I'm still blogging. You'll still watch me. In fact, right now I'm doing a retrospective on the last bride that I made a wedding dress for. The wedding dress business, like when the pandemic hit, it was like wedding dresses are out, weddings are out and online learning is in. And I had already been teaching online for 6 years. So it was a very natural progression to just let the wedding dresses fall away and to move full time into teaching, which I, totally adore. Maybe someday I'll do some more wedding dresses, but I'm pretty happy right now just working here with my students. So yeah, check it out. Brooksann.com, BROOKSANN.com. I'd love to work with some of your listeners.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been really fun.
Do go and check out Brooksann's website. And even if you're not signing up for the courses, which I hope you will, read her wedding dress blog posts because they're just fascinating. Before this gets too long, I'm going to wrap this up by saying feedback is always welcome. Guest suggestions, topic suggestions. I've had some good ones in the last couple of weeks, so keep them coming. You can send feedback through the fan mail feature. You can leave a comment on the show notes page, and the podcast website is at www.thestraightstitchpodcast.com. You can email me at janet@janetzabo.com. My website is www.janetzabo.com, and that's where I have links to my Big Sky Knitting Designs website as well as my blog. The blog has been full of pictures, not so much of sewing this week, but of other things that are happening around here. So if you want to check that out, I try to give a little snapshot of what life is like out here in Northwest Montana. So until our next episode, I hope that you have a great week and that you get to go sew something.